Let's bring in our political panel to talk about this and other things. We're joined by Liberal MP Jason Falinski, and we're also joined by Linda Burney, who is the Shadow Minister for Indigenous Australians. A very good morning to you both. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning and thank you.
Jason, I'll begin with you. Do you support Cricket Australia's decision not to refer as January 26th as Australia Day as part of its BBL promotions?
Look, ultimately, this is Australia. Cricket Australia runs cricket. If that's what they want to do, I support their right to do that. I guess it's just been disappointing that it's sparked the sort of debate that it has sparked.
You support, you say, their right to do this, but do you support the idea?
Look. Ultimately, this is a question for Cricket Australia and how they want to promote their game. When I was growing up in the sort of 70s and 80s, Australia Day wasn't as big as it became after the bicentennial. I understand, so this sort of idea of it being attached to sporting matches and games is a more recent one. But ultimately, Cricket Australia has to make that call, and they're responsible to their stakeholders for the call that they make.
Linda Burney, it just seems like such a small move on Cricket Australia's part. Some would even say it was tokenistic, but the Indigenous community does seem to think that it is a major move.
I have congratulated, and am very much on the record for thinking that the move that Cricket Australia has taken is a really, really important and good one. And I've actually done a little bit of research and I've looked at the overall reconciliation action plan that Cricket Australia has. They have a stretch RAP, and that is the highest level of a RAP you can have in Australia. There are very few organisations that have a stretched RAP. And this is a part of a much bigger picture that Cricket Australia is doing in the Aboriginal space, and good on them.
Linda, interestingly though, I'd like to get your thoughts. Nick Cummins, the General Manager of the Melbourne Stars and the Commercial Manager of both Victoria City's BBL franchises, said during the week that they would continue to promote the two games at the MCG on January 26 as Australia Day matches. And I quote, because he says his view, Melbourne Stars' view, is that it's a complex issue that needs time and extensive engagement. Has this move by CA been perhaps a little premature though?
Well, my understanding is that Cricket Australia has taken advice from its Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Advisory Council. They've done enormous things in the Aboriginal space, including increasing Aboriginal players by 800%. There are something like 9 Aboriginal players in the BBL, and there are a couple of Aboriginal players in the women's side that have actually worn the baggy green. So this is not a flash in the pan for Cricket Australia. Is it tokenistic? No, it's not, because it fits into a much bigger plan that Cricket Australia has through the Reconciliation Action Plan, and you're absolutely correct. And that is that Australia Day, or the 26th of January, or Survival Day, whatever you want to call it, is a difficult and complex day for First Australians. I feel incredibly conflicted on the 26th. I've got a very busy day, and I'll be doing things that are, citizenship ceremonies and so forth. I'm sure Jason's doing the same thing. But I'm certainly doing, and it's what the Labor Party's promoting, not a change of date, but at least for everyone to take a few moments that day to reflect on the truth of our story in Australia.
Jason Falinski, I wonder whether this is where the crux of the matter is. We've just heard there from Linda Burney outlining how significant it is for a portion of Australia, and that's quite a large portion as well. The Prime Minister says that politics and sports shouldn't mix at all. I wonder, though, if perhaps there is a portion of Australia who just don't understand that this small move is actually part of a bigger picture.
Oh, undoubtedly, Fazia, that's the case. Undoubtedly that there is a section of all, Australians it's a very diverse country with a lot of diverse views, and part of Australia Day should be bringing everyone together so that we can hear other views. And I think that's what Scott Morrison and the government has been trying to promote Australia Day, this Australia Day, that we all come together and listen to each other's stories. And look, what I was trying to say in elegantly at the beginning is that Australia Day has evolved over time, even just in my lifetime. So what Linda is saying is absolutely the case. Australia Day should be a day when we recognise our failures, but more importantly that we recognise the purpose and the potential of our nation to bring so many different people from so many different parts of the world together, and that we can create more hope and more opportunity into the future.
Interestingly, Jason, just before we move on from this, do you think the Prime Minister read the room wrong? Now, I'm quoting an Indigenous cricketer's tweets, Dan Christian there, saying that Scott Morrison read the room wrong. Cricket Australia is leading the way because your government won't. What do you say in response to that?
Well, Catherine, I think my response to that is somewhat internally inconsistent. So what I would say is in the history of the world, what is needed in this issue, generally speaking, is better understanding from all sides, as Fazia was just alluding to. And in the history of the world, as far as I'm aware, no one on Twitter has ever tweeted, "Oh yes, I see your point of view." I think that Scott Morrison is not a person, is not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but he is very open to new ideas and trying to understand an issue better. And I think there are a whole bunch of people who, if they got on the phone, he would be very happy to meet with. And I mean, equally, I'm sure that he will be reaching out to them to get onto the phone to them as well, to understand their point of view so that he can move forward on, reconciliation is not a destination. It is a journey. It is one that we will always be on. And I know that Scott Morrison wants to undertake that journey better than what we have been doing in the past. And I know the people who come after him, whoever they may be, will also want to do that too.
Well, the Prime Minister found himself in some hot water earlier this week as well for certain comments that he made about Australia Day. He has walked back from those comments. He has clarified himself. But this initial comment of January 26, 1788 wasn't a particularly flash day. I have a feeling that this phrase is going to haunt the Prime Minister for quite some time now. For those on the fleet, he says, for the First Fleet. Linda Burney, Frank Bongiorno, the writer, says that this language was of a knockabout kind, which is what the Prime Minister is. Is it appropriate for the leader of a nation to be saying such things?
No, it's not appropriate. And I actually think it's the Prime Minister playing politics, not anyone else. And there is no competition on suffering. It is just wrong to say, that it wasn't a very flash day for the convicts. He had his historical facts wrong. There are actually 11 ships in the First Fleet, not 12. I think 6 of them were convict ships. The thing that I've always said, Fazia, is that we need to understand the perspective of those on the ships and the perspective of those on the shore. And that's all we're saying. And if the Prime Minister, and I accept what Jason's saying, if the Prime Minister really wants to improve reconciliation in Australia, he would desist from making such stupid, intemperate comments like the one that he's made. There is no competition on suffering.
If we can just move the conversation along somewhat to some reports in the Herald today with regards to the Order of Australia honours list. And Jason, there are comments from the Governor-General that there seems to be bias against women. There hasn't been enough of a light shone on Indigenous representation. Do you think the council that decides these awards needs an overhaul?
Catherine, what I'm about to say, I suspect I will regret. But look, I've got to be honest. Every new governor, yeah, indeed, I know, Linda. Here I go. Yeah. Every new Governor General comes in and makes similar remarks. Every Governor General in their term tries to fix the system or to mend the system so that it works better. I've got examples here in my community where we've got people who get awarded honours, which you look at and you sort of wonder why they got those honours, and you see other people. I mean, the one person I will pull out is a former mayor who taught Latin and French at school. She's done extraordinary work with homeless people, extraordinary work with some Indigenous Australians in our area, better understanding the Indigenous culture in this area. She can't get an Australian honour, but there are other people who frankly got it, and I'm not saying they weren't worthy of it, but for doing their job. They were highly paid public servants who've been awarded honours. I really do come down to the view that I'm not sure that this system can be fixed, and it might be time for us actually to recognise that people do a lot of this work not because they want to get an Australian honour, but because they think it's part of being part of the Australian community and the Australian project. And so you would think that there would be no planes coming over given that Sydney closed down, but anyway, of all the times.
Yeah.
And therefore, that is something that I really think, you know, where the system just continues to let us down. People in their community know who their heroes are, who the people who are worthy of it. And I'm just not sure that this system has ever actually operated the way it should be. And I suspect that once Michael Jeffries, who is a good person, as Peter Cosgrove was before him, as were a lot of the Governor-Generals before them, who all seem to make similar comments, when he leaves and the next Governor-General comes in, they too, after about a year, will discover that they think the system hasn't been working the way it should be.
Linda Burney, just very quickly, we're running out of time here. Do you think that, as Jason says, it is the Governor-General, David Hurley, stirring the pot here, or is there really some truth to the fact that perhaps the panel who decides on this list, this honours list, may not be in touch with modern-day Australia?
Oh, I know nothing of the panel. Perhaps it needs to be more public about who makes these decisions. But I do agree with David Hurley, who was a very decent person, that the Australia Day honours should better reflect what and who we are as Australians, and it doesn't, and it should.
All right, well, as always, it's fabulous to have you both joining us to hear your thoughts on various issues. David Falinski, Linda Burney. Look forward to next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.